Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Omniverse of Nick, and part 19 to the Mcqueen Walking Dead story. I'm your host, Nick, and like always, before we get into today's episode, be sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the Omniverse of Nick channel, and comment your favorite part or parts of ongoing or past stories, as well as future recommendations for what-ifs and general discussion that you might see happen on the channel in the future. With all that out of the way, let's get into today's episode with the Savior's arrival much earlier than in canon, and a bunch of unexpected reunions and plot twists behind the scenes of the current group. Shane and Michonne have made themselves known. Mainly Shane, but Michonne in a second, for who I think you'll recognize, with Negan leading. He goes up to the leader, Rick, and first proclaims him like he's the leader, right? The one that his old buddy Shane told him about, and Rick has to process that too. And then Negan asks another question. Where's the talking car? And the screeching of no tires at all, and the scared reaction and just the grinding of the gears on the asphalt and pavement gives lightning away almost immediately. But Negan was almost completely sarcastic because he saw Michonne slice off the tires. And Negan just points to Mcqueen's like, that ought to be the sickest, most awesomest thing I ever seen. And then goes for Lucille and prepares to whack Mcqueen. And this scares him because Mcqueen's thinking, am I gonna die here? But Negan, he doesn't. This was a test. And honestly, he tells Mcqueen he was just kidding because, let's be for real, Negan, he is not going to take out someone as awesome as Mcqueen looks. And it's probably a better reaction than anyone has given him before this point. And he goes to Rick next and says to him he doesn't know how, why, or even care to know how Rick got a sentient, talking, freaking vehicle on his side. But honestly, he doesn't care. It's sick. And he actually really, really respects Rick's group for having just Mcqueen on their side. It's awesome. And he says, they're probably wondering why Negan's group is here at this so-called good place and why he has them on their knees right now. It's because of Rick's old buddy Shane telling him about the talking car in the group. He couldn't have him become a threat, so they had to neutralize said threat, and it just so happened that they arrived at the perfect time. And Shane and Michonne make themselves abundantly clear about killing Rick and whoever else, honestly, or just shooting them. It's really undecided. But then, Shane sees someone in the group. It's not Rick, it's not Lori, it's not Mcqueen that catches him completely with fear and just utter shock. And Michonne, she pays attention to what Shane's staring at. And this catches her attention as well. They stare at Morgan Jones, the guy who they met back in Atlanta and supposedly killed and took all of his stuff. And there he is, with a look of recognizing them to a degree because of the slash and the shotgun. Just because of those factors, Morgan recognizes them. Negan smirks at Shane and Michonne. It's like, do you know this guy? And Negan actually gets a look at Morgan, and he's even more bewildered and surprised. Negan's having the time of his life right now, and would get a kind of governor vibe from that story that I made out of Morgan. So, 3 one-eyed people Negan's come across. Carl, the governor, and Morgan. It's weird. But Shane yells at Negan to cut the SHIT and stop joking around, because that guy Yes, they do know them. And he is a threat. He is an utter monster. And he had thought that him and Michonne took him down. Negan wants to know how they got all those weapons before they met. It's because they took them from this guy. This guy was out of his mind. He trapified Atlanta, tried to kill them, and was just supposedly dead. And if he is actually Rick's friend, and that has actually put the pieces together, how is he with them? And he asked for permission to end his life and whoever else is right now. Negan's like, be my guest, because he has no reason to. Sure, he put them on their knees and everything, and Negan's group has them surrounded, but the group didn't do anything to outright attack Negan's savior group, so Shane and Michonne, they're on their own. For the moment, Rick just looks angrily at Shane. It's like, you can't do this. Remember who we are. We are your family, and you turned your backs on us. Or back, because they don't care about Michonne. Morgan's the only one who kind of knows Michonne. And Lori snaps at Shane too, saying, how could you do this to the people you used to be a part of? But Shane is unwavering, gets angrier, and aims his shotgun all the more at not only Rick's and Mcqueen's and Morgan's, but everybody's direction. And says, he is not getting persuaded out of this. He made the choice to leave the group because they were weak. He made the choice to leave the group because they were safe being around a car that was literally a threat to them all. And that's it. He was done. Michonne gets her sword ready right as Shane is saying all of this. And Shane says, the group now has 2 threats with them. And if he were around then, he would have killed them both then, and he's going to now, along with Rick and anyone else who dares to defy him and his new place in this world. And prepares to shoot everybody that he sees as a threat. It flashes to Morgan, then Mcqueen, and then Rick. And Rick just looks at Negan, mainly, and every one of the saviors, including Shane, and says, looks like you thought this through, except you all forgot one big thing about getting into a tussle with us. Negan just mockingly walks up to him and says, and what would that be, dear old Ricky? And Rick, after 2 seconds, just gets right up in Negan's face and said, you're all effing with the wrong people. A terminus and pretty much just bold, normal canon line from Rick finally being used. Mcqueen enables his machine gun turret, which is all of his weapons are still operable, he just can't move, and starts gunning down all the saviors. Rick, who's already in Negan's face, bites his throat out, just like Joe and the Claimers in the comics. Finally, that canon moment is put in too. Negan falls, clutching his throat, as he seemingly dies. As for all the saviors, all of Rick's group and the Alexandrians are gunning down all the saviors there, including Mcqueen getting the most out of it with missiles and machine gun turret attacks, getting a lot of kills in the process. Morgan and Michonne have a tussle, with Morgan using his broken, now better shafted, pull against Michonne's blade, which would be a really cool fight. Shane gets a shotgun ready to shoot Morgan to help his kind of lover now at this point, but Rick steps in his way and fights. And with one strong kick while Shane's back is turned, Rick goes at Shane and an all-out fight between the two of them begins. Meanwhile, Morgan has a high advantage. He's not all clear monstrous Morgan like before, but that's still part of him. He hasn't had that Eastman side of him, so that's forever who he is. and he gets Michonne on the ground. And before he kills her, he looks down at her and just says 4 last words that would stick with Michonne before Morgan would kill her. "You should have killed me." And with that, sticks his pole straight into Michonne's head, killing her. Shane sees this and is completely and utterly surprised and goes to help and is just all over the place with emotions, but Rick still stands firm. He is not wavering and tells Shane this. Negan is dead, and so are most of the saviors here. Shane has nothing now. How could he do this? Just abandon his old family and just leave? No matter if he eventually ran into Morgan or not, no matter what happened, how could he just leave them? Were it not for Sophia, Mcqueen or not, they were family. Now, Shane has a choice to make. He can either rejoin them and fully appreciate what he had, or he can die like the rest of these people. Because at this point, he is dead to them if he chooses that side. Shane just looks down for a moment, and he yells at Rick, saying that he is a complete and utter fool, and that he was right to leave the group. And he is an even more fool if he thinks Shane is going to give up because of what's just happened. Shane says he left the group because they were weak. That is until Rick decided to come back from the brink with a car who he still doesn't understand how much of a threat he is. And now his quote-unquote friend who he thought he killed is here, and Rick's just all okay about it. No. His group, the Saviors, who he now has control over, are his and his responsibility. And that's just made Rick an even more bigger fool for killing Negan. Because now, Shane's not only going to show him what having 2 threats around the karma of that will do, but he's also going to show him how it is to lose someone. And Shane gets his pistol, aims it, fires, and it hits Lori square in the chest. With this distraction, Shane and the remainder of the Saviors, including Arot and the others, just book it out of there. They retreat. With this distraction, no one's bothering to finish them off. And Shane tells Little Timmy and their brigade to hold them off to make sure they don't come after them. But that doesn't really last very long, as Little Timmy and the brigade are blown to smithereens. How poetic! By a very vengeful and angry Lightning McQueen. Not only losing his tires, but seeing his best friend's wife struck down by Rick's quote-unquote old best friend. And now Rick and Carl especially have to just acknowledge the fact that Rick's wife and Carl's mother, including Judith's, is now about to die. But they go over, and Lori, she still seems like she's very much alive. She's in pain, but she's alive. Rick looks down at her in utter shock and confusion and asks her, "How are you still alive?" The bullet, yeah, Shane probably didn't shoot Lori in the head because of past relationship or whatever, but the fact that she is alive, even from a gunshot to her chest, she should be dead. Lori doesn't know either until her eyes get petrified with horror and realization, and she yells out on the ground, "I lost our child." Remember, Lori was pregnant with Rick's 3rd kid. Rick hears this and he cannot believe what he is hearing. Not only has Lori survived getting shot just now, but their child, Rick's unborn kid, died in the process. So now they have to process this. Think of how massively big that moment would be. After a long moment of realizing this and setting all this in, Deanna steps up to Rick's group and speaks. She says that she never would have expected a group like Negan's or anything like this would have ever happened, bar at the car, and she asks Rick if they would like to stay here in Alexandria, under one condition. Rick leads in her place because she feels of her poor acknowledgement to the world that Rick, seeing what he is capable of and seeing all of his group, he would be the better fit to lead this place. And that's a pretty good deal. Rick thinks on this and is really not sure if this is the best time. But Lightning, Lori getting up now, and Carl holding Judith, they all acknowledge the fact that even though this is a poor time to be asking this, even if they've had a minute to settle what just happened in, they honestly don't have a better place to go. So this is a very fair deal. And let's be honest, this place could probably use better leadership. And they don't even know Alexandria yet. So Rick reluctantly agrees to this proposition. And the group now has to not only make themselves home in Alexandria, but hopefully never run into Shane and the remainder of the Saviors ever again. Meanwhile, we cut to Grady Memorial, because that's been doing a lot of development. I did say we'd have some behind the scenes, because it's been the theme of this story. Dawn and her group are flourishing with even more survivors and people because of Milton's involvement and his people being there from Woodbury and everything. Grady Memorial is in the best spot, not only the original story, but just any story. And Dawn, she can't believe it either. And honestly, she's thought about putting Milton in charge. But honestly, a combined effort sounds much better. So it stays that way. 3 months later, at the Grady Memorial Hospital, Milton is outside, at the top of the hospital, looking out, having a nice break after a good long day of work getting done in Grady Memorial. But then he sees something in the distance, something coming closer, an airborne object, a helicopter with a strange logo. But that's not what catches Milton's attention. Oh no, this is something big. But what really catches his attention is that the fact the helicopter's coming towards them, like right towards them. And before Milton can even bother to think about what's going on, the helicopter strikes a missile straight at Grady Memorial, blowing it to Kingdom Come. With just 1 to 2 missiles, it's down. And everybody is killed. Bar 3 people. Milton, Dawn, and O'Donnell. The 3 survivors, they push themselves out of the wreckage to find that Grady Memorial is completely destroyed. Everyone else is dead. Suddenly, they get encountered from people from the helicopter. A few soldiers in weird gear and a guy who calls himself Okafor, all aiming guns. Dawn aims her gun and is completely heartbroken and dumbfounded as to why and how they've been attacked. They've done nothing. They never knew these people. What's going on? Okafor introduces himself and says that they, with this hospital, have threatened the safety and security of their community, the CRM. It had grown too much in power and would eventually become a highfalutin problem for what they are building. So that's why they had to get taken down. But the 3 of them, Okafor is willing to let them in if they stand down and don't present themselves as a threat, like the hospital possibly was before they blew it up. But O'Donnell's not going to pay any attention to this and goes to attack, being the main stronger one out of the 3 of them, obviously. But that gets shut down in 2 seconds, literally, with a CRM soldier gunning him down mercilessly. Okafor looks at Milton and Dawn, asking them if they're stupid enough to try the same thing this man did, or if the two of them are willing to start over in the only right place in this world. As he said, the CRM's safety and security is the most important thing in this world, more important than anything this world, whatever it has left. And that's why the hospital had to get taken down, to make sure that their community does not get overpowered by some outside interference or something like that. And he tells them that if they get let in, they will be treated right, but not if they fight here like that man just did. But Dawn still holds her gun firm in retaliation, not wanting to listen to a word that these people are saying. Milton, on the other hand, he's acknowledging this. And honestly, he has no reason to fight here. True, they did just destroy a community that Milton was building after losing Woodbury to the secret of the governor, but honestly, if they fight here, they'll lose everything they have anyway, which is basically just their lives. So, going for something that sounds like it's really that good, the most powerful military on the planet, they honestly have no choice, and it's really a decent idea at this point. And Okafor is glad that this man at least saw sense, which eventually Dawn listens. And the two of them are very, very securely put into the CRM to make sure that especially Dawn doesn't fight back. And we cut away from them for the good long, if not rest, of the story. As for Gabriel, you guys might be asking what is happening with him since he didn't go with the group in this story. And I'm afraid to tell you people, like my What If Rick Didn't Kill Shane remake, or What If Rick Exiled Shane remake, whatever the frick you want to call it, because there's 3 different names, he is unfortunately going to die here. With no fight instinct in him, and no other people, he would die to walkers. So, unfortunately, that's Gabriel's fate here. As for the sanctuary, we now have a new leader. A new one to hold the bat, Lucille. And that is Shane Walsh. How will he lead the Saviors in a new retaliation against Rick and their people? Will he even go back? Will they find some other community and meet in the future? How will the retaliation go if they do happen to cross paths again? And how will the CRM take into factor Dawn and Milton? Or will we ever hear from them again? And that's where we leave things. What do you guys think will happen next? How did you like this episode? And what is your favorite part so far? With all that out of the way, be sure, as always, guys, to smash the like button, subscribe to the Omniverse of Nick channel, and comment your favorite parts or parts of ongoing or past stories, as well as future recommendations for what ifs and general discussion you might happen to see on the channel in the future. With all that out of the way, we're gearing up towards almost the climax of the story. So, be prepared.